The paper slid across my mailbox like a knife across skin. Crisp, white, official. Violation notice. Her voice followed it, dipped in sugar but sharp enough to leave a cut. "You're violating community appearance standards," she said, adjusting her oversized sunglasses, clipboard tucked like a crown under her arm. "This kind of vehicle invites the wrong kind of attention. You have 72 hours to move it, or we escalate." I didn't blink. Didn't give her the satisfaction of a flinch. Instead, I laid my hand across the mirror-polished fender and spoke calm as a Sunday morning. "That vehicle is insured for over 600 grand, and I built every inch of it myself." For just a fraction of a second, she hesitated. A half-beat pause. That's when I knew exactly who I was up against. Someone who lives for control. Someone who confuses paperwork with power. A clipboard with a crown. "My name's Mason Hale. I run Hale & Sons Restorations in North Hollow. And yeah, the & Sons is aspirational. My old man passed before we finished a car together, but I left the name as a way of keeping him near. The machine in my driveway wasn't just metal, it was memory. A 1961 Jaguar E-Type flat, welded bonnet, the exact car my dad used to dream about, the one he described like it had a heartbeat of its own. When I say I built it, I mean nights spent with his cracked socket set, torque specs echoing in my ears, and his voice teasing about British electric. I built it bolt by bolt, sweat by sweat, as if every part reattached me to him. So when Trina Caldwell, vice president of All Dairy Preserves HOA, told me it clashed with the visual harmony of the block, what she was really saying was, my father's voice didn't match her decor. I didn't move the car. Instead, I left the garage door wide open all weekend, chrome gleaming like therapy, buffing the reflection until neighbors slowed their cars, side-eyeing but saying nothing. Trina circled twice in her silver Audi, never stopping, never speaking, because people like her preferred paper cuts to conversations. Then came Monday night. Mabel, my old shepherd mix, stiffened near the window, growling low, the growl she saved. For real trouble? I followed her gaze, saw the orange bloom where my Jag suit used to be. Glass popped like popcorn, flames rolling across polished paint. My chest tightened because I knew this wasn't an accident. The car had no battery, no ignition, no fuel, nothing inside it should burn. So I stood barefoot on the concrete, smoke in my throat, making myself watch. Because some losses you owe your dead to witness. The fire crew came, did their job, called it undetermined cause. But I knew better. I catalogued every detail, the sweet chemical bite of accelerant, the flames pattern licking upward from the passenger side like a match against sandpaper, before sunrise. I'd sent 2 emails, one to my insurer, one to Noel Hutt, now a senior investigator on high-value fire claims. No patience for lies, no time for fiction. By breakfast, my HOA sent a community-wide email. No sympathy, no mention of my burned shrubs or the fact that my life's work had been reduced to ash. Just a cold reminder about fire hazards and compliance. They didn't even hide it, they blamed me. 2 days later, another notice hit my mailbox. Photos of my burnt car, stamped with bold letters, remove hazardous remains within 48 hours or face fines. That's when I knew Trina Caldwell wasn't just hiding behind her clipboard, she was playing a different game. A dirty one, one that would bury the mess she made under paperwork and dare me to dig. Emma, my wife, laid her hand on my shoulder. "This neighborhood isn't worth your blood pressure," she said, and I wanted to believe her. But grief is heavy, and anger is light, and I needed something I could lift. So that night I took a walk around Alderey Preserve, past the regulation hedges, the perfect flags, the curbs cluttered with basketball hoops, the forgotten pumpkin wedged behind a boxwood in April. Rules weren't rules here, they were weapons. And in the wrong hands, weapons always get used. The next morning I walked into the HOA office on Cedar Grove, a beige building that smelled like copier toner and stale coffee. The receptionist slid a half-page incident appeal form toward me. No space for evidence, no place for photos, just a little box to describe my complaint like it was a grocery list. That's when I knew the system wasn't built for truth, it was built for silence. On my way out I paused at the framed list of board officers, names printed like some holy scripture. President, Vice President, Treasurer. I stopped on one, Franklin Bell, Treasurer, quiet man, always scribbling notes at meetings, rarely speaking, the kind of man who knew where every dollar went because he signed the checks, the kind who might hate bullies as much as I did. When I got home I pulled up my Nest camera footage, smoke sirens, ash turning white against the night, but something bugged me. The HOA bragged every holiday party about their Fort Knox security system. A camera mounted above our cul-de-sac should have caught everything, so I filed a request for the footage. 3 hours later, an email landed in my inbox. From Trina herself. Unfortunately, the system experienced an outage during the relevant time window. Cute, too cute, because I had restored a 71 Challenger for the regional manager of SecureSpan, the vendor that installed those cameras. And outages didn't erase cloud-mirrored backups unless someone told them to, so I called in a favor that evening. Behind SecureSpan's warehouse by the loading dock, Colin Reyes shuffled nervously, glancing over his shoulder. "Maze, I can't. hand you video without a board order, he said. But I can tell you if something weird happened. 10 minutes later, he slid me a folded printout. 3 lines of text. Failed login at 2:05 a.m. Admin sync at 2:06. Successful access at 2:12 by user t.caldwellvp.ben. One more line. Command manual overwrite. Segment deleted. I stared at it until my pulse hammered hollow in my ears. You sure about this, Colin? Not at once. Audit logs don't lie. I slipped him a coffee card, the kind of quiet thank you he could use without getting caught, and drove home with the paper trembling in my hand. Proof. Real, undeniable proof. I scanned it, backed it up, in 3 places, and called Noelle. You want a claim, or you want a case? She asked. Her voice was flat, army sharp, like she already knew what I'd say. Both. I told her, and I want it loud enough that she hears it in her sleep. Give me 48 hours, Noelle said. I'll drop a preservation order and subpoena. Request so clean they'll think a judge wrote it herself. Most people would have stopped there. But grief makes you restless, and I wasn't done. That night, I drove to a beige office park, headlights cutting through silence. A paralegal named Jenny Pike opened the door barely wide enough for me to slip through. She whispered, "I'm not part of this," and before I could answer, shoved a flash drive into my hand. The door clicked shut behind me when I got home. I loaded it. Hundreds of emails. A museum of petty power. Fines waived for allies. Extra punishments for enemies. And then, buried between gardening memos and holiday party budgets, I found it. An email from Trina to Tobias D., her husband. 2 nights before the fire. Subject line, the car. Body, if he won't comply. The obstacle in his driveway will be handled. Handled. Not reported. Not resolved. Handled. I showed it to Emma at the kitchen table. She read it once, then twice, her hand trembling as she pushed our old velvet ring box across the table. Inside was the gear knob from my father's Jag, the one he etched with his initials 60 years ago using a cigarette lighter and a nail. Hold this, she said softly. Remember why you fight. The weight of that knob steadied me more than any subpoena. But Trina wasn't done. 3 new notices landed in my box the next morning. Noise violations, grass too long, non-conforming garage paint that had been approved 2 years earlier. A storm of paper designed to bury me. And then came the strangest letter of all. A friendly reminder to treasure a bell that somehow ended up misdelivered to me. It listed discretionary adjustments she'd voided by her signature. A breadcrumb trail of how she kept him compliant. Favors given, favors taken back. That evening, I found Frank Bell by the koi pond at the community greenhouse during their monthly garden walk. Trina's favorite photo op. I slid him the mist sheet. His eyes scanned the paper. His shoulders sagged like a man setting down a heavy box. She keeps receipts on everyone, he murmured, eyes on the water. Then, after a pause, I joined 2 balanced budgets, not to cover fires. He started to walk away, but before he disappeared into the crowd, he looked back, almost too soft to hear. Your dad used to wave to my kid every morning on the way to chemo. I remember who you are. By the time I got home, my showroom window had a new display, a poster-sized print of the audit log, her username, the timestamp, the deletion command, black on white like a billboard for truth. The next morning, the HOA posted an emergency board session for Friday. Noel called me as soon as the notice went live. We'll be serving a preservation order in that room. Do not take the bait. Let her talk herself into the box, I agreed. But inside my blood was already humming, because Trina Caldwell wasn't ready to fold, and people like her never go quietly. The clubhouse smelled of fresh paint and stale nerves. Rows of folding chairs stretched wall to wall, every one of them filled. People who hadn't shown up to an HOA meeting in 5 years sat forward like they were at a sentencing. Some clutched packets of bylaws. Others just folded their arms and waited. When I walked in, conversations hushed. I could feel the stares. Not pity, not sympathy, curiosity. They wanted to see if I'd break. 5 minutes late, the door swung open. Trina Caldwell entered in a slate-gray suit, hair lacquered into perfection. Husband Tobias trailing behind her like a shadow. She gave me the quick glance you give a wasp you hope is already dying. Then strode to the front and gripped the gavel she wasn't authorized to use. Ordered, she snapped. Bang, the sound echoed sharp against the walls. She started with words like misinformation, rumors, protocol. Her voice rolled through the room like she'd rehearsed every syllable. Then she pivoted, eyes locking on me. We have a homeowner, she said, who has displayed repeated non-compliance, endangered the community with fire hazards, and now circulates fabricated documents meant to smear this board. For the safety of Aldari Preserve, I moved to censure Mason Hale effective immediately. The room buzzed. Some neighbors whispered. Others shifted uncomfortably. That's when Frank Bell stood. The quiet man, the note-taker. His voice cut through the noise, steady in the way only men done being silent can sound. Point of order, he said. Page 14, Section 3. During an active investigation, all punitive actions are stayed. A ripple went through the crowd. Trina froze, lips parting. Then Frank laid 2 documents on the table. An invoice from Secure Span Billing for a remote deletion fee, signed by T. Caldwell, and the audit log I'd plastered in my showroom window. Her username, her timestamp, her deletion command. Gasps rose like a wave. Trina's face flushed. She tried to recover, voice pitching sharp. Those documents are stolen. They're out of context. This is, but the back door opened, and Noel Hart stepped inside. Jeans, black t-shirt folder in hand. No badge flash, no theatrics. Just a presence that carried authority. She walked straight to the front. "Miss Caldwell," she said evenly, setting a sealed envelope on the table. "Capstone Insurance has opened a joint claim and liability investigation. This is your legal notice. Effective immediately. Preserve all emails, logs, and financial records back to March 1st. Do not delete, do not alter, do not issue further fines without third-party approval." She tapped the envelope once, like a dealer setting a card on the table. Trina's hand trembled. From the back row, someone muttered, "About time." Another neighbor clapped, quickly stifled, but the sound hung heavy in the air. Trina tried again, words stumbling. "This is harassment. This is an overreach." But Noel didn't blink. "It's obstruction if you keep talking." Silence. Fell. Trina's eyes darted to Tobias. His jaw was tight, but he didn't move. She banged the gavel again, weaker this time. "Meeting adjourned," she muttered, slipping out the side door as whispers erupted around her. By morning, her name quietly vanished from the HOA website. Vice President vacant. 2 days later, the president resigned, citing family time. And, within a week, 3 reforms passed in a single session. Mandatory third-party audits for all surveillance access, a 2-signature rule for discretionary spending, and a new clause guaranteeing homeowners the right to raw security footage when their property was involved. They called it the Hail Clause. I hated the name, but I also loved it. The days after the meeting felt quieter, but not softer. It was the quiet you get after a storm. Branches still broken, puddles still deep, but the wind finally gone. That week Noel called to close the loop. "City attorneys reviewing potential charges," she said. "Tampering with evidence, misuse of HOA funds. Your claim approved in full, with damages. The letter's already in the mail." Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. The kind of weight that means the fight wasn't wasted. When I opened the letter 2 days later, I almost laughed. Enough money to replace the car, enough to fix the roof, enough for the therapy I didn't think I needed. Proof on paper that truth can still carry a $sign. Colin from SecureSpan sent me one final text. Just 4 words. "Audit complete. Access traced. A home IP address." The kind of sentence a bully can't outspin, no matter how hard they try. Trina and Tobias disappeared from Alderley Preserve within the month. Their slate gray Audi parked in front of a realtor sign one morning, then gone the next. Rumors said they moved to towns over. People like that always find another board, another clipboard, another set of neighbors to control. But not here. Not anymore. The board elected Frank as interim president. He didn't want it, but the community trusted him. He introduced the reforms officially. Transparent budgets, surveillance logs accessible by homeowners, mandatory double signatures. Boring stuff, maybe. But boring is what keeps fireworks out of other people's driveways. Neighbors who'd never spoken to me before started waving. Not pity, respect, maybe a little relief too, knowing somebody had finally pushed back hard. Enough to snap the spell Trina had cast over them. I didn't throw a party, didn't celebrate with champagne. Instead, I went to the shop early one morning, sunlight spilling across concrete, and pulled the cover off a bare steel shell sitting on the lift. Not the one I lost. A different 62 E-type body-worn paint. Stripped. Story still untold. I stood there with the original gear knob in my palm, the one with my dad's initials, scratched in 60 years ago, and made myself a promise. This time, I'd build it slow. Every bolt copper greased, every grommet lined true, every detail right. Not to race, not to sell, but as a dedication. A car built with patience, not fire. Because winning feels good. But finishing what you promised. A man who raised you, that matters more. And here's the truth I keep circling back to. Rules aren't bad. Neighborhoods need guardrails. Standards matter. But power without humility always reaches for the match. If people like Trina can weaponize bylaws to hurt the ones they don't like, then the only counterweight is neighbors willing to be inconvenient, learn their own paperwork, to ask for the logs, to call the friend who knows the back end of a camera system, to show up on a Friday night and vote for boring reforms, to print the ugly truth big and hang it in a window if they have to. So tell me, where are you listening from? Was I right to push this hard, to take it public, to let it get messy? Or should I have kept my head down and let insurance sort it quietly? Where do you draw the line between community standards and personal rights, between privacy and accountability, between a neighbor who cares and a board that punishes? Drop your take in the comments. Argue it out. Tell me what justice looks like on your street. And if you've got your own HOA war story, I'm all ears. Hit subscribe if you want more true homeowner showdowns, because the next one's already idling in the bay. The reforms came faster than anyone expected. Within a week, the board passed rules people had been whispering about for years but never believed would happen. mandatory audits on surveillance access, a two-signature rule for discretionary spending, homeowner rights to view raw footage anytime their property was involved. They called the last one the Hail Clause. I hated the name, but I loved what it meant. Proof that truth can ripple out far beyond one fight, reshaping the ground under everyone's feet. For the first time in years, Alderley Preserve felt different. The air wasn't thick with suspicion anymore. Neighbors waved instead of kids rode bikes across streets that once felt patrolled by Trina's clipboard. People stopped me in the driveway not to gossip, but to thank me. Some admitted what I already knew, that they'd been afraid. Afraid of the fines, the notices, the constant threat of paper weapons. But now, the spell was broken. Emma told me I should feel proud, and maybe I did, but mostly I felt lighter. Not because I'd won. Winning wasn't the point. It was because for once, the balance of power had shifted back where it belonged, toward the people who actually lived here, toward neighbors instead of paper pushers. Still, there were nights when I stood in the workshop alone, the silence pressing heavy. The Jaguar I lost would never come back. That smell of smoke and melted paint still clung to me sometimes when I closed my eyes. But then I'd pick up the old gear knob my father had carved with his initials, and it grounded me, reminded me why I fought in the first place. Because cars can be rebuilt, homes can be repaired, but dignity, legacy, that only survives if you protect it. The 62 E-type shell in my shop wasn't just a project anymore, it was a promise. One I'd finish slow, every bolt copper greased, every panel lined true, every wire neat. Not as a monument to what Trina destroyed, but as a dedication to what my father built into me. Patience, craft, and the refusal to bow to bullies. But here's the question that still lingers in my mind. Was I right? Right to push this hard, to drag it into the open, to risk neighbors, friendships, and even my own peace of mind? Or should I have just let the insurance handle it, kept my head down, and moved on quietly? That's where you come in. Tell me, where do you draw the line between community standards and personal rights, between privacy and accountability, between a neighbor who cares and a board that punishes? Drop your take in the comments below. Argue it out. Tell me what justice looks like on your street, and if you've ever fought your own HOA battle, or lived through your own Karen nightmare. I want to hear it, because one thing's for certain: power without humility will always reach for the match, and the only way to stop it is for people like us ordinary neighbors to be willing to fight back. So hit subscribe if you want more stories like this, because trust me, the next showdown, it's already idling in the bay.